Welcome to Americana Quill, writer to writer. Please like and subscribe and tell a friend that likes to subscribe. Today I have the honor of sitting down with a new author who released a debut book, Survivor's Remorse, The Healing of Faith. Survivor's Remorse, The Healing of Faith provides a courageous and inspiring account of the author's journey through the intersection of faith and mental health after a 2019 heart transplant. A major depressive disorder, Dr. Vaughn chronicles the complicated heart transplant process while discussing the role his faith played in his recovery. Although for him, mental illness was more of a formidable opponent than the actual transplant. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Arthur Vaughn.
Hey, how are you this morning?
Good. Can't complain. Happy to just live another day, able to have a conversation with a doctor. Is that from educational pursuits, or are you like a medical doctor, or
A PhD? Yeah, PhD. Okay. I worked in higher education for quite a while. Yeah,
nice.
Actually, until I fell ill. Yeah.
Yeah. So I definitely want to get into that. But how was your health during these times due to COVID, and then it's a lot happening, I guess, with you, from 2019 into 2020.
Well, I tell people I was social distancing before it had a name, because through the process, I went through rejection 3 times, which required me to get on some heavy doses of immunosuppressants and steroids, and had me stay away from people because my immune system was weaker than most. So right. It's just an unfortunate extension of what I was already doing.
Absolutely. Yeah. So what's your definition of faith before you wrote the book, and what you were going through, and your definition of it, I guess, now?
Well, I'm not sure I have a definition. I just knew that I always believed that Jesus Christ was our Lord and Savior. I grew up believing that. I knew that. There was no question in my mind. But through this process, I think my faith grew deeper. I prayed more. I feel a change in how I view the world. Things that used to bother me no longer bother me. I don't allow them to. I'm more in touch with that side of my existence, but I don't know that my definition changed. I guess my definition has always been the understanding that Jesus, as I mentioned, that Jesus Christ is our Lord and Savior, and He died on the cross for the forgiveness of our sins.
Right. Yeah. How was your process of writing the book? How did you know that you wanted to do it? What was your thoughts before you did it? Things of that nature.
So it was sort of fun. Before I received the transplant, my body had felt very weak, and I was in and out of consciousness. But after the transplant, my pastor had come and visited me in the hospital a number of times, and we talked about journaling, right? About just writing things down, just as a coping mechanism. And after the surgery, when I was a bit more lucid and my body was still not strong, but stronger than it was pre-transplant.
Right.
We had odd hours in the hospital. You really don't get to sleep in the hospital. They always want to come test or draw blood or do blood pressure right when you're getting that good sleep. But then one of my nurses, because in intensive care, there's like 1 nurse per 2 patients. Right. So you get a lot of individual attention. But they would come in, one of the guys that was one of my nurses would come in, and Colton and I would sit and talk, and I'd ask questions. I was naturally inquisitive. I was the executive director at Morehouse School of Medicine prior to becoming ill. So I was around a lot of MDs and heard all the medical talk, and would work closely on the administrative side of hospital administration and med school and research. So I became very inquisitive and knew some of the phrases and terms. And we'd sit up at night and I'd ask questions and he'd pull up my chart and he'd say, "Oh, well, how many times was I cardioverted, which is when they shock your chest to get your heart rhythm?" And they'd be like, "Oh, well, we charted 30, but we know we did more than 30 because it happened so frequently we couldn't write it in the chart and do it." So I'd ask different questions and learn different things, and I would keep journaling, and I would keep writing things in the journal and then journaling, and even non-medical things, how I was feeling in any given day, the ups and downs of the day.
Right.
And even when I came home, I continued that, and it sort of evolved into, well, I had this pretty thick journal of all this information that I went through. Let me start writing. Let me
Was
turn
there
it into
any
something else.
right?
Yeah.
Was there any trepidation of even saying, "Let me release these personal feelings to the world about what you were going through at the time"?
No, I think prior to the process, I probably would have not shared some of the things that I ended up sharing. Um, but I had just come to a point where certain things didn't matter. There's a lot of vulnerability in the book that I share.
Right.
The conversations about uh, going through major depressive disorder and how to go manage that and how I went through it and some of the really dark days. And prior to this process, I probably would not have shared those kind of things because, like a lot of us, I probably saw it as, well, I don't want people to see that weakness in me.
Hmm.
Um, but after going through this, I was like, hey, I'm an open book, and if I can be a blessing to somebody else, let me do that. And I made it through the other side.
Right. So with the major depressive disorder,
Mhm.
were they just very tough thoughts of even wanting to still be here? Like, what was your thoughts during those moments? Or am I going to get out of this hospital bed? Like,
Well, a lot of that happened after I came home
okay.
from the hospital, and there would be days. It could be 3 days in a row where I'd be in the bed, dark room, eating. I was just laying in the bed and struggling about, why did somebody die so I could live? Um, in the quiet times, I could just listen and hear this heart that's 30 years younger than I am beating in my chest. There was days I didn't know if I was going to make it. One of the first things I did, I live in the South, and guns are part of, it's normal where it may not be normal in places like New York, right? So
Right.
I do own a firearm. So I can see the safe now, but I put it in the safe and called my attorney and said, "Hey, come get this from me." And he said, "Oh, I'll come tomorrow." I said, "No, I need you to come now."
Right.
And he came and I said, "Give this back to me anytime soon." So I just got really low at times and was like, why am I wasn't sure I was going to make it. I mean, especially after the rejection, because the rejection is what really triggered the depression.
Okay. That makes
Yeah.
sense.
I was
I
like, I
guess
can't.
I asked that because some people, I think, when it comes to different mental illnesses, I think it's them just trying to find a way to feel free and free their spirit of whatever they feel is contrapped inside of them. So that's why I was curious on your thought process of what you thought of your mindset at that moment, basically.
Well, I didn't think I was going to make it. Like I mentioned, it was
Right.
after I went through rejection a couple of times. And I just said, hey, I can't live through last July again. I'm not
Right.
going to make it through that. I just can't. It took everything in me to get through the period of getting acutely ill very quickly after playing golf, after running my eighth 10K. And I'm like, what are you talking about? My heart doesn't work. I just ran a 10K 3 days ago, 4 days ago.
Right.
So just trying to manage that and say, I can't go through last July again. I really don't have the physical or mental strength to do it again. And it
No,
just
that
took,
that makes sense.
yeah.
Now that you have written your book,
Mhm.
is this now something that you see as a passion of yours of to continue to write, or you think you might just this is a one-off kind of ideal for you?
No, I really enjoyed the process, the creative process. it's a lot different than my day job, analytical and number driven. I
Mm-hmm.
really enjoyed the creative side coming out. One on the family history from 1841 to, and I haven't figured out when I'm going to pause because there's always room for volume two.
Right.
Um, so I don't know. I'd have to do research to get current because there's so many things I don't know, especially since I've moved south. And then I'm working on another book about called The Talk, and it really chronicles the life of a fictional 10-year-old till he gets 18 and the different conversations a father and a son would have with a young man as he goes from moves into adolescence,
Mm.
uh, especially with some of the things going on in the world today as examples of different conversations and how that would change between a 10-year-old conversation with a 10-year-old and then a conversation with, say, an 18-year-old that's getting ready to go off into the world.
Right.
Yeah.
So do you feel like your parents had those hard conversations with you, or you feel like you learned by experience and now you just at least want to equip your children?
Oh, yeah. No, we didn't have those conversations. We learned a lot
Yeah.
in the street. And
Right.
sometimes it was pretty bad and completely off base.
I mean, for me, I feel like my dad, he didn't have to say much. Just through observation, we learned a lot from him. Just him coming home every night and just seeing what he was going through as just a Black man was enough for us to know that it was, it's a lot out there. So I don't think he ever verbally said, hey, this, and that. But it's like, if you know by through observation with him, for sure.
Absolutely. I could see that. One of the biggest things I think I learned from my dad was work ethic. Like
Mm-hmm.
he grew up in it multiple generations before me, right? He was born in 29.
Yeah.
I mean, so yeah, so he was like 40 when I was born. So it wasn't like a generation. There's a couple of generations
Right.
between me and him, but we learned about working. He finished the 9th grade, went into the military, fought in Korea, but he always worked. If he had to work 2 or 3 jobs to make sure there was food on the table, he didn't complain. We never heard him complain. If he complained, we didn't hear it.
Right.
But he was always willing to work and we were provided for. Now, some of those other life lessons, like women or different things that would happen when you're away from home, he didn't really talk about those, and we didn't see that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the kind of stuff you learned from other places.
Right.
But definitely about doing what you got to do to provide for your family. We definitely learned that part from him. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No, that's pretty cool.
But I could definitely see how your dad would be quiet and just sort of moving along the way and saying, "Yo, this is what I do." Like that.
Right, but I mean, if I would ask, he would answer, but it wasn't volunteered information. He didn't just say, "Hey, sit down, let me tell you how to navigate these pitfalls." Because I think he didn't always get those lessons necessarily the way he probably. So for him to articulate it, I don't think was always the easiest. That's just my opinion now as an adult. But
yeah, I think many men of his generation, his father's generation, they didn't talk. Your grandfather, he was in the Navy, and I believe it was the Navy for him. I know all of them served, right? All of my uncles served in the military in one form or another, one branch or another, and they didn't talk. They just didn't have those kind. Like at the dinner, when we all got together in Brooklyn for dinner, they were loud. It was just a natural conversation, and nobody was angry at all. So they talked then, but they didn't talk to us. It wasn't that. Let me sit down, son, and talk to you about this. That did happen.
Yeah. So I think that's something that he might have learned, but he's very more communicative now as an adult than he was for me as a child. And I think that's just him learning how to navigate those things. So
yeah.
So that's interesting to hear that.
Yeah.
Okay. What is the last book you read, fiction? And then what's the last book you read that's nonfiction?
Okay. So that's a good question. I think, and I don't have my glasses on purpose. I think the last couple of books I've read one was Makes Me Want to Holler, but I think they both may fall in the same category of nonfiction. Makes Me Want to Holler by Nathan McCall. It's a book I read in my adolescence, which really was about him and his life, going through the different changes and different experiences. And then I'm big on making sure that one of the things I learned as a young person, I know what it's like not to have, but I never want to not have. Right. So a friend of mine wrote a book, 90 Days to Unlocking Your Financial Freedom. All right. So through this process, I had to say, okay, I'm on disability right now. I'm blessed to not worry about where my paycheck's going to come from, like a lot of people during the COVID phase or whatever.
Right.
But I wanted to make sure that I line myself up to make sure bills are paid, that everybody that counts on me is taken care of. So I read this book about unlocking my financial freedom to make sure that I manage debt, I manage cash, I'm in a good financial position to make sure people are provided for. But I think Nathan's book was probably a combination. It's supposed to be nonfiction, but I think he wrote it in a way that probably lends itself to some fiction. One of my friends would call it the oral tradition. There's a lot of oral tradition.
Right. Good wise tales. Yeah.
Yeah. But,
yeah. When writing
you visit Nathan's book, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. Continue, please.
I think when reading Nathan's book and looking at some things that have gone on in the last 4 or 5 years, it's sort of like, wow, that book I read when I was in college, which is some time ago. And a lot of the things that, it's still relevant. It would still be a book that if somebody read today, I think they would enjoy, and they would probably align it with some things that go on in the world, really.
Well, those are the best books, right? It's timeless. It's not about a set period of moments like that does no longer exist. So
absolutely,
I can see that. When you wrote your first book, did it energize you or did it exhaust you? Because I think now that I've written 7 books, I'm getting to the point of where after I release the next batch of my books, I'm going to have to take a year or 2 break just for my own mental health. And I think that's why I'm getting into the podcast space of maybe writing blogs to like build out a website. Like this is, I'm still trying to do things, read more than I ever have. I've read 3 books this week. So
you said this
how do you feel about writing at this point? Is it still energizing for you or is it exhausting because of now you're diving into deeper characters?
Well, I guess it's a bit both. Based on the topics, I find it energizing, right? So if I was writing something that I wasn't really interested in, it might be exhausting, because I remember during periods of writing this book, I had to sit it down. I'm tired. And I had to sit it down. I thought I was going to write it a lot faster than I did, but there were periods where I just had to sit it down and just let it be for a while and then come back to it. So I might sit, not write anything for 2 or 3 weeks, and then get through a period where I'm just writing and writing and writing. So I think I went through phases of being energized, and then other times being exhausted of the process and frustrated of the process. But at the end of the day, I'm proud of the outcome. And on the next book, I've jumped into it. There's some days when other things in life don't allow me to sit down and write, but right. I'm really enjoying when I do. So I think I'm really energized right now.
Yeah. But it's like when you catch lightning in a bottle, it's good to go, and get it out.
But you said you did 7 books. Well, how much space was between each? Were there
I only started
back to back to back?
Some of them might have been back to back to back. I started my writing in 2013, but I didn't release my first book until 2014. So within 6 years, I've written 7 books. But I've written more. It's just about finding the time space of when I'm able to release it, get it edited, and things of that nature. So
Yeah.
For 2021, I'm going to release 7 books, and that's why I'm going to take a 2-year hiatus.
Now, are you self-publishing?
Yeah, I think that's the way to go until you build up your brand, and then you have a back catalog that you can negotiate with, along with whatever new books you might have available to you. So I'm taking the marathon approach of building out my catalog, and then from there, seeing if I can sit down with a publisher that is willing to buy my back catalog along with the book I'm trying to sell them in the current future. So
I used a publisher, and because I think I knew so little that I didn't. I was going to self-publish, but my publisher, she did things like she had editors on deck, artists to do the cover. Um, she really walked through the layout and design things that I don't have that skill set, and then helped it get released with Amazon and Barnes and Noble and such. Things that if I had completely self-published, that would have it would have driven me nuts because I just don't know how to do those things.
right.
So I guess it's not like a big corporate publishing company, but more so somebody to help me get through the process.
No, and I've tried that too. After I published my first book, I thought maybe teaming up with someone would be helpful, but then when you realize how much you get back in royalties and this, that, and there compared to what you do by yourself, it's like I was better off just doing it by myself until I build up a true brand of where I can stand on my own and where I'm not paying someone to help service what I can do for myself, you know? But like, I understand for the first time why you would do that. But anytime you have any questions, you know, you can now come to me and I'll definitely help you out.
Outstanding. That would be helpful because like I said, I want to release 2 in 2021, and then we're going to keep going from there. Over the next 3 years, I'm just going to keep writing. I'm just going to keep writing and find different topics and things that are interesting to me, and things that I think people would be interested in. Right.
So yeah, I've mastered putting out the book. Now it's time to master the marketing and how to sustain sales and not it just be a network of people I know. I want to reach those people that are just avid readers. So that's my focus now is to reach those people necessarily.
Yeah, the marketing part is hard. I see this big banner behind me that I had made for the first book, right? But you know, now I'm learning how to do different Zoom things and different media where you can't reach out and touch people, and finding ways to get the book out. And I am finding that, you know, when I do an event, I'm probably selling more at one time than when I go look online to see what's happening through
absolutely
Amazon.
I mean, face-to-face interaction is amazing because they'll give you a shot if they like the cover, if they get to meet the person, they feel more connected to want to give you a chance of reading a new author. It's the online sales I want to help raise up because it's like if we're working 9 to 5 just to survive, it's hard to navigate the whole setting up a book platform somewhere to sell books. So
I totally how do you get your name out there broader than like you said, you're a network of friends.
Right. Yeah. Or those that at least finally took the time to read the book. So they'll come back around, but it's like, how do I get more of them? So that's my goal within the next 2 or 3 years is to focus on that part. So that's why I'm starting the podcast, just things like that, just so I can learn more about people and also just build another portal for people that love to read and write to get into it.
And several people have asked me, do you have an audio book? You know, they want to be able to sit in their car and listen to it or sit wherever. And they don't want to read it themselves, which is amazing to me. They don't want to read. They want to hear the message, but they don't want to have to sit and read it. They want to be able to like do whatever they're doing and have it playing, you know, during their commute or while they're home doing whatever. And I was like, wow, I find a certain joy of sitting and just reading. You know,
well, it's a certain leisure and luxury of that for sure. That some people just want to be quick to keeping going. But I think for me, audiobooks is good if it's about information, but if it's about just a good story or even some good nonfiction, you want to highlight what's important so you can always go back to it. You can't do that in an audiobook. So it's like, I don't understand so much.
Yeah.
But
I was like, we got to slow down a little and take time to, you know, we can't always, I've learned also through this process, I can't always be on the go like I was, you know, sometimes you just want to You need to sit and watch the grass grow. And we don't
Right.
do that as much. Every once in a while, let's enjoy whatever spoils we've earned. Watch the grass grow. Go by a lake or a beach, whatever you enjoy doing.
Yeah.
But
Right.
take some time and just chill.
And enjoy the solitudes of your backyard and things of that nature. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So it's been a great process, and I've been, like I said, it's energizing. And I've also found when I talk about mental health,
Mhm.
right? If I start the conversation, men will talk. They just no one wants to be the first one, but they're willing to have the conversation if somebody else brings it up. Then they say, "Yeah, I went through this too. I'm going through this." But no one wants to be the first one. No one wants to be the one to jump out and say, "Yes, I have weakness." I mean, they know it's there, but when somebody else brings it up, I'm finding that we'll
People
talk
are
about
more free to talk about it. Yeah,
it because they feel
absolutely.
like I'm not here alone. I'm not here alone, even though they instinctively know they're not alone. But when they hear it, they're like, "Okay, cool, we can have that we can have that conversation." So
So how,
I'm enjoying that too.
yeah, how did you promote this book outside of like Zoom interviews and things like that? I see you're an alum of Syracuse, so I could imagine that's a big network for you to reach back to let them know that you produced the book out there for people to read.
Yeah. So I'm a member of a lot of different groups. So, but last night, two classmates of mine also released books this year, and we did an authors roundtable with the folks from Syracuse. And we videotaped it, and I have to finish some editing. And then, there was a nice number of people that got on yesterday, but we'll release it more broadly through our
Mhm.
alumni network. Um, Next week, I'm having another virtual authors event with members of my fraternity, and it'll be the guys from not only the Northeast where I was initiated at Syracuse, but also through the South, and
Mhm.
that'll be you know hopefully that'll get it out, but also through social media, whether it's Instagram, Facebook. I most recently got a Twitter account. I'm not really good at tweeting, um, but just trying to find all these different networks and having people sort of help. And I'm getting a lot
Right,
of good feedback from those who have read it.
right.
But I really need to figure out how to touch more people. And I go to the hospital monthly for routine checkups after the transplant, and I really need to promote it through that network, and I haven't. I've been neglectful, but my next appointment is what are we in? I don't know what more. It should be soon, quite frankly.
We're in
But I'm
October, so sometime in November, I assume.
yeah. So I will share it with the folks that are going through this, and
Mm,
and so that'll be the next one through the medical community. And
right.
as I mentioned, I used to be the executive director at Morehouse School of Medicine, so I made sure that I sent free copies to the president of the medical school. Yeah.
No, I mean it makes sense, right? It's like we'd be so. I'm surprised of some of the networks I actually do have. It's just that I figure I don't want to bother nobody, but I have to get out of that mindset of just saying it's okay just to at least represent them with what you're doing at the time being. It's up to them to either accept it or not. But you
Yeah.
got to give them the opportunity by letting them know. So
And I'm
that's
trying to.
something I'm learning too.
There's a book, and I'd be happy to send you a copy because I have quite a few. The Brand Within. I'm a big fan of Damon John, right?
Okay, yeah.
So he has one of his books, The Brand Within, and basically when I was a professor at a different university, I had Damon come speak to my business students. And we paid him to do it, so he's a nice guy, but he still got paid.
Oh no, he a businessman still. Yeah,
Yeah. So really understanding your brand and how to market and email marketing. So I'm trying to learn as much as I can about email marketing because right now, like we know, these bookstores aren't having face-to-face things. So how do I touch people?
well, I think building a website with an email, that's what I'm doing now is actually I'm building out my website with where they can put in their email and therefore
Yeah,
I can have my own data compared to me thinking a lot of people, because you're not going to reach everybody through your social media platforms because it's through algorithms. So,
I did. I went to my Gmail account, right? And I
mhm.
exported all of the email addresses that are there. Those are people that have either emailed me or I emailed over the years. Some
Right.
I may have talked to fairly recently. Some I may have not talked to in years. But I exported that database, and it gave me a great start of a couple of thousand email addresses of people who, like I said, who at some level we've communicated.
Right.
So using one of the email marketing platforms, I send stuff out regularly to them. The thing I haven't worked through is I send them one. How many do I send before it becomes annoying? But I feel like I need to touch them more than once before some are gonna buy the first time, and figuring out how many times I need to touch them before they actually purchase something.
Well, I think sometimes it's not about always selling them something. It's about maybe you letting them know what's going on through a blog, and you give them helpful tips. And then maybe you just leave the link at the end of where they can purchase your book, instead of you just saying, hey, please buy my book. I'm author Vaughn, and give them. So I had to learn that the hard way too. It's like, I think you'll get more out of my book, just out of the fiction, because I'm writing from like a moral compass of like trying to still teach a good story.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe sometimes just giving them a helpful tip on just what you do in your daily life, of maybe 10 minutes of prayer in the morning sets out your day or something like that. And then you leave a link for where they can maybe support you in other ways. And you just do that monthly. Eventually, if they keep on liking what you're giving them, they'll purchase the book.
Okay. And monthly, that's a cadence. That's a good cadence, is touching them once a month. Because if you touch them too often, they're going to unsubscribe or complain, right? They don't, like everybody else, you don't want to fill up their email box. And, especially with people working from home, it's just a different environment. And they're probably getting so many more. They probably got a lot of emails before, but so many more now because you're not seeing people as much.
Or maybe you do it once a week where it's in a pleasant way where it becomes part of their routine somehow. Those are the ones you want to keep. It's like, so it's a fine balance. It depends on what you're trying to service to someone.
Absolutely. Because for me, the book sales would be nice, but it's really the message. How many people can I get this message to, and can it be of help to them? So yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Do you have any questions for me or anything? I don't want to be one-sided.
No, I'm good. This is a good conversation. So you wrote 7 so far. So what are the topics that you found interesting that you wrote about?
Well, my first few books were coming of age stories. One of them was, I guess, loosely about my life and me trying to navigate my hometown of being like although we grew up in a suburb, it's very, it's a lot of red line, a lot of red tape where I grew up. So it's like just knowing that you don't get all the resources that the neighboring towns get. You notice that at a young age, living in Long Island, especially being, it's still one of the most segregated counties. Nassau and Suffolk County are top 10 in segregation, which people don't know. So it's like we deal with a lot of inverted, like internal racism that you don't even realize until you get to certain ages and you start seeing certain things. So just talking about those moments. And then just other books that maybe been downloads from, like God, it's like I just write them in like a fiction format of just telling a good moral compass story. So I've written about 7 fiction books, and that's just kind of my thing, just writing fiction. And with the next group of books, I'm doing a lot of a crime series called Malcolm Evers, which is basically a playoff of Medgar Evers, the civil rights leader. I kind of have him in the prism of, imagine if he didn't get shot and he assassinated, and he actually lived out his full life where he actually does decide to become a lawyer, since he did apply to go to Ole Miss for law school. So imagine if he, instead of going there, maybe he goes to Howard since they didn't allow him to. And he gets his degree. And then from there, that now becomes the family trade. So within the family trade, now you have his great grandson who's a lawyer, who's now fighting somewhat a civil rights battle in the first book of defending a Black man who had to kill 3 rogue officers who thought it was okay to try to steal something from his family. He just did it in self-defense. So now he's going to trial, and then the prodigal son of Medgar Evers' great grandson is now defending this Black man against these white people. So it's kind of like doing a crime series fiction of that ilk, starting from civil rights history into kind of like present day. So that's something that I've written a lot of, that's going to be released in 2021, called the Malcolm Evers series. And the first book, the title is Just by 12 or Carried by 6. So that's that. And then I write screenplays too, so it's a lot harder to like sell a screenplay if people don't have a book. So then I just decided to convert the screenplay into a book for two of my stories. One of them being A Love in Central Park. That's where I kind of met my wife, and we kind of had some of our deepest conversations at Central Park. So although it's not about our story, it's just the prism of using Central Park as the backdrop. So I wrote a book, a rom-com book, kind of for that. That's coming out. So I'm just an overall writer. Like if I have an idea, I'll execute the idea all the way through. It's like I just, just don't stop. And I think that's why I want to take a year or two break. Also, I'll just keep writing books, but like not building up the foundation of marketing that I need to keep going.
I tell people all the time, I said, you never know when you're going to be a character in a book. So never think that every conversation and every time we talk that you may end up as a character and not know it. And they're like,
right.
Really? I'm like, yeah, it could happen. Something. If I pull out my phone, it's not that I'm texting when we're together. It might mean that I'm taking a note because I won't remember.
Right.
4 hours, 5 hours later, when I sit down, I'm like, what was that conversation again? So I was like, I'm taking it down now. Like,
and I hope I answered your question. I feel like I was a little long-winded.
No. Oh shoot. Wait till you hang out with me a while. You'll be like, oh yeah, I'm not. He's long-winded. But no. So what got you into writing? You mean when you finished high school? What did you do?
I was actually helping out at my cousin's store. Well, I went to college, got a degree in business administration, minor in sociology. So then after, in New Hampshire, in New England College. So I went there to play lacrosse. So I played lacrosse and things like that. So after that, I was trying to find a regular 9-to-5, but it was really hard. So I started working with my cousins, and I was reading The Alchemist. And although the book was I felt like it was written so simple but it was such a great story. I was like, I think I could write a book. So then that's when I started trying to dip my hand in writing. And then once I wrote something that I felt was powerful, I was like, wow, I think I could do this for a living and be happy. So then that's when I just kept doing it and just never stopped ever since.
Well, that's very cool.
So, and I think it's because it was written so simple. When you're not a writer, you don't think you're a writer. You think everything's written so complex. But when you read something so simplistic, but gets the message home, it's like, okay, I think I can write. And from there, I was able to.
Yeah, the biggest challenge I had was when I first wrote, I gave it to the editor. She said, you just wrote an academic paper. And I said, well, that's what I do. Right. He said, I need you to learn how to. It's funny, when I first went to the doctoral program, they said, we need you to learn how to write like an academician, right? I need to learn how to write like an academic. So now I do that fairly well. And now they're saying, no. You need to stop writing like an academic and write like somebody that's telling a story. And I said, you're killing me right now.
I think the best way to know that is I tell some people that I consult and I help consult with is read a newspaper and realize that they're writing on a 4th to 7th grade level. It don't go past that. Yeah. That's how you want to write your books so it can reach everyone. It's not about reaching the elite that knows that level. It's about reaching everyone. And you do that by writing in the most basic levels. It's about getting from point A to Z. It's not about necessarily making a lot of turns to make you feel like you know how to write. It's like, no, make sure everyone feels comfortable to read. So
I had to take a lot of the medical terms and put them in like the word cardiovert. No, people are like, what the heck is that? But then I said, I talk about, getting your heart shot. They say, I get that. I see that on, so I had to.
Yeah, I see that on ER all the time on the reruns, right?
Exactly. So I had to, I couldn't use those kind of terms.
Right.
I was like, yeah, I know what that means, but most people are like, I have no clue what that means. And if they have to pick up a dictionary to read your book, they're not going to read it.
No, it's true. Or they might just get frustrated and give you a bad review out of their own frustration. Because some people don't want to do research. They just want to read the book and know if they get it to understand it, cool. If not, then they'll be like, I don't get it kind of thing. So,
and one cool thing about having an editor, I had a friend who wrote a book and I bought it because I wanted to be supportive. And I was like, yeah, dude, I got to like 10 pages and I had already pulled out my red pen and I was editing your work. I said, I stopped reading. So why? I said, because I don't want to have to edit what I'm reading for fun. And you have so many grammatical and spelling errors in here that
Right.
I'm editing instead of reading.
Some people try to cut
Down, I was
corners.
like, I'm done.
Right.
But I let them know that. So,
I said some people
and I
try
let
to
them know.
cut corners on that stuff,
Yeah.
but it's like you can't cut corners. Like you got to get fresh eyes because you're not going to see your mistakes, and that's okay if you don't see it. But you got to let someone else see it and make those decisions to fix it for you.
You got to let somebody else edit your work.
And as an independent author, all publishers, there's going to be one or two, but when it's past 5 or 6, it's like, all right, and it's not all on different pages, all on one page. That's when it becomes an issue for people, for sure.
Yeah. And I was like, I'm on page 10, and there's a lot of red on this. There's a lot of red ink here. I was like, I supported you, but I'm not reading this. And may have a very good, message, but I'm not going to find out because I can't keep editing.
Right.
But yeah, but I've enjoyed the work. It's fun, and it's also therapeutic. Like I'm going to be home for a while as I continue to heal. So it gives me, it's
so how long did it take you to write the book, and how many pages do you think is a good book for you, or how many words count is how you feel?
I didn't count words. I waited till the message was done.
Mm-hmm.
So this book, I have it in my hand, right? It's 190 pages, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I have my friend's book, Nikki, the financial book I mentioned, hers is 103 pages.
Yeah.
So
it's all relative. That's why I asked that question.
Right? How many pages does it take to get that message across?
Right.
So it took her 103, took me 190, and mine is, and the number count's going to be different because my book is a different size than hers and more pages.
Is yours a 5x8 or is it bigger than that?
No, what's that? That's about 5x8, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the standard size. Yeah.
So,
I'm just kidding.
And then it also matters, I was looking at word count, but the next one I'm working on, this family story, I include some images. So that's going to take up some space, right? So
right.
That book may be longer or shorter. I don't know yet, but it's going to have some images in it that also take up space. That'll make the page count go up.
Yeah.
I don't know what the word count will be, but the page count might go up because of, part of telling that story requires images to me. When you think of a school at the beginning of the 1900s, we can't think of the schools we would have went to for high school. These are wooden structures with tin roofs that had 2 rows of chairs. Now, right. So that imagery, those optics are going to matter in telling that story to understand
the time period,
to help understand the time. Yeah, to put it in perspective, because some of us don't realize, we're far away from that, but not that far.
No, yeah, I think people fail to realize that Blacks only been free about 30, 40 years, but really probably only when I was born. If you think about like my dad, if you think about if he was born in the South, he probably wasn't considered born free if he had to go through Jim Crow, right? Yeah. So it's like it's technically, if you want to be technical about it, I'm probably the first one outside of maybe my youngest, my dad's youngest brother. I was probably the first one that's like born without those type of tapes and in America.
Brian had all that stuff too. He's not that much younger than I am.
No. But what I'm saying is he was born at least in the 70s where the laws were at least passed. You know what I'm saying? Where that wasn't necessarily.
But yeah, because all of the rest of them, and even me, because I'm in the late 60s, Brian's early 70s. Yeah, the laws got passed right before the Voting Rights Act was passed 4 years before I was born, right?
Right.
And then how long did it take to truly implement? And
exactly.
How my parents or grandparents were fortunate that they were in a little more fortunate being in New York as opposed to their mother who started off in South Carolina in a much different time. She was born, I believe, in 1909 in a much different time in South Carolina, and then eventually moved to Philly, and from Philly to New York.
Right.
So yeah, it is a very different.
I think that's a felt perspective.
Somebody that was born in 1909.
Right.
having the opportunity to have that conversation
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
remember, people that were born in the 1800s and things that gone, that's why I have to write about it, because I don't want it to be lost.
Right.
And if somebody doesn't write about it, it'll eventually get lost. And you know,
In translation. Yeah.
yeah, 'cause I'm really learning that I'm quickly becoming an elder. Last year when I came up for Aunt Tibby's funeral, I was like, yo, I'm becoming an elder. There's only two people of the generation before me still around. Your granddad and Aunt Rose.
Right.
They're the only two left of the generation before me. So I was like, I
Yeah.
gotta write this stuff down, and the stuff they taught us, because it'll get lost.
Right.
Even if it's only for our family and no one else reads it, I don't care. But I would, because I just don't want it to get lost. Um, Now I'm not becoming that we well, we have cousins of that generation, Buddy and other people, but direct lines to us. Uh,
Right.
you know,
Yeah,
it's
it's far and
so
few between.
yeah. So I said I have to write this down. I came across notes and information, and I said that's gonna take priority over the other book, because I just need this to be done.
Right.
It's
Even
just
if you
gonna
don't publish it, even if you just get it knocked out, that's fine too.
yeah. And I can even just self-publish that and be like, hey, the next time I actually show up to a family reunion, I'll be like, hey, one of my gifts to everybody is this book.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, After you get it published, I found out how inexpensive it was for the author to buy their own book. I was like, I like this.
Yeah, 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 for
So for
sure.
me to buy it and sell it, is so much more lucrative than having to pay everybody else to,
Or tell them to go to the distribution channels of Amazon or Barnes and
yeah,
Noble.
yeah.
So absolutely.
So
Yeah.
that might be, something I do as I think about that. I don't know the next time we'll have one of those. I'll have to talk to those who plan such things.
Right. Absolutely.
But yeah, but I enjoy writing it, and it's very therapeutic. I don't know. I find it to be therapeutic. How about you? You.
No, absolutely I do. I just think for me to make it my life's work, I want to start focusing on the other aspects of it. There's no way around it. It's like I tried. I tried just to write my heart out and see where that takes me. And for those that read it, they love it. But then it's like I gotta find a way to reach people. So that's why I'm gonna take about a year or two hiatus. But it's not what I'm releasing a lot of material out to the world. So
So what I was told was, and I don't know, I'm still learning. So I listen to a lot of people, right?
right,
But they said what I really have to figure out is how to get into a space where somebody wants me to speak about this story, right? So if you get invited to have the conversation about what the book's about, when you're making it your life works, that speaking about it and getting paid to speak about it will
well,
give
that's
you
just another
financial freedom
right.
to do more writing.
I think that's possible, but I think there's a way of selling enough books where you don't have to necessarily go back to work. It's all about the person's approach, right? But I think eventually you're going to want a whole pie of a business. So maybe the podcast is one thing of a stream of revenue. My books itself is a stream of revenue.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking engagements will be a thing too. So it's all a process. It's just building the foundation. But if I don't write the books first that I have, I don't think I have enough cachet to necessarily say this is really what I do for a living. All these other things is great. It's like I'm forced to do it because I want to keep up with the time. But I think I'm very old fashioned, and if I could just write a book and let that sell, I would do that. That's just not the time we live in. So it's like I got to pick up other things. But I think I'm a storyteller first, more than even just a writer. It's like I like to tell stories. I like to figure out the beginning, middle, and end. Like that's just what I fell in love with. So, but yeah, speaking engagements, I think it's easier for an author of your ilk that has a personal story that they're putting their name behind. Anything personal with me, I'm writing it within a form of fiction. It's like you won't know what's really me, what's my family or what, just because that's just how I chose to take on the craft.
And I feel like writing one book makes you an author, right? But you have to writing multiple books can make you an accomplished author. There's a lot of people.
Yeah.
There's probably a lot of people that write one book because they have, like me. I could stop this one and say, "Hey, I wrote this book. I'm done. I got this story out." And that's good. But as I write more and more, as you mentioned, and I have a catalog, it really makes me. You don't want to be that. You don't want to be a one-hit wonder like they would say in the music industry, right?
Right.
You don't want to write one and then say, "Okay." You want to be able to say, "Hey, I have a series of books that are quality that
Right.
that you do something with."
And I think being an independent author helps you build out a catalog. Now, if you were able to get major publishing, you might take a break because you already have an advanced check. You don't have to do as much legwork probably. But
yeah,
I think building a catalog is just the way to go if you're going to try it independently, because you could wait for years waiting for somebody to say yes to you. And it's like, if no one knows you, they're not going to say yes to you at this point in time in traditional publishing. So me knowing that, it's like, let me put the work in and see where it takes me, so I have some bargaining chips if I ever do get to the point of a major publisher. So.
Because I have a classmate from undergrad who works at a publishing house, and even calling her, she said, "Hey, when you finish this, send it to me." And I mean, she was kind, but it was sort of the blow off at the same time.
Yeah, because it's about upstreaming you, right? It's like if you do well, if you sell enough copies, then maybe we can upstream it to our major publisher. But then you're going to give them half of everything you already worked on. It's like it's a. I don't know. I feel like doing it yourself, it's a longer route, but you'll feel more rewarded at the end if you have to give up a piece of it.
So I sort of feel like there's three kinds of publishing, right? There's the one you just mentioned where you do all this work and they take more than half, it feels like. I mean, some people I heard getting very couple of dollars per sale. And that's
Right.
like one of the big ones. And then there's self-publishing where you do it all of the work from soup to nuts, as elders would say, and you really collect your royalties. That's yours, the whole thing. And what I did, I think, is in the middle between. So I had to pay up front, right? So it cost me a couple of grand, but they, like I said, the cover, the editing, the layout, once I wrote, they pretty much did this stuff. But then once they get it to the distributors, the Barnes and Nobles, the Amazons, the Books A Million and others. But now my royalty is, significant. On every book, it's about $12, which, from what I'm told, is pretty good as a royalty, right? But then when I sell it myself, like I could go to a conference and sell them. And
you probably get $17 because you're only paying for the print cost of the book, which is probably $3 or $4. Yeah,
I take the book and say, okay, I'm taking 20% off sale, but my royalty is actually larger after I take the 20% off.
Yeah.
Then when you Amazon. So I do that too. Once we get back to face in 2021, my doctors tell me next summer. So they said it'll still be different, but 2021 is when they think the summer of 2021 is when they think there's going to be some tested and readily available vaccine for COVID-19.
Yeah.
And I'm listening to them. I'm not listening to the politicians. I'm listening to the physicians.
No, absolutely. I hear you for sure.
So I think there's three different ways to publish, and people have to figure out, based on their skill set, which one fits. I like the one in the middle work for me because
do you feel like you're recouping though, or like you're going to recoup your budget soon, or no? Because that's another thing too, right? It's like if you don't have the network that you have, is it worth spending the few grand or doing it yourself so you can recoup your budget if you can take your time and do everything articulately well?
It depends on how you look at it. Financially, I'll probably recoup what I spent, hopefully before the end of the calendar year, right?
Mm-hmm.
But fortunately, I'm in a position that if I don't recoup it, I'm not gonna, it's not gonna keep food off the table.
Right.
So to me, it was beneficial because, as I mentioned, that person that wrote a book before that I had to red ink to. For me, it was the cost benefit was more about releasing something of high quality. So yeah, let's say I don't ever recoup my money, which I think I will, and I think I will this year. I have a high quality product, as opposed to saying I don't have certain skill sets. So if I had tried to do it all on my own, I probably would have had a low quality product, or maybe I'd gotten frustrated and just put it down and never dealt with it. So I
Right.
guess it depends on
I
how
mean,
you.
it's a growing process of doing it independently, of understanding better formatting, different things like that. But it's like once you get it down packed, it's like doing it yourself. I think
Yeah,
it's just as good as you spending the $2,000 to see it the way you did, maybe.
but you got to develop the skills. You got to understand your shortcomings, right? Like some
Right.
people write better than others, and you have to say, okay, this is where my weaknesses are. Where do I find resources in my network to sort of help me where I'm weak?
Right.
You know? And if you can do that, doing it all yourself is great. If you can find
Yeah.
people that can help strengthen where you're not necessarily good. I mean, you might be a good storyteller, but you don't write well. So how do I translate my story into the written word and
Right.
make sure it's at the end of the day, you want a quality product. You don't
No,
want to put it
absolutely.
trash. So where do you find the people to help you where you're weak?
Well, it's places where you can still allocate your funds instead of like doing it a one house shop. So it all depends on the author, like you said, for sure.
Yeah. So the publisher helped, but as I learned, she was farming things out too. Like she wasn't doing the editing. So when I paid her, and she was in turn paying someone else to do the editing, paying someone else to do the cover art. So
Right.
she was sort of like, I have the resources, and I'm going to farm it out, and I'm going to pay these other people. I get some money off of this as well, but it became like, well, she's farming everything out. So she's really just a hub.
Right. So I think now that you're writing, you'll find your own hub, your own writing system, your own team that you can always allocate, and you'll be able to save money that way too now.
Absolutely.
So that's the great part of what you did, is you got to see a little bit of the inner workings. And when I did that and I saw how they were working my book, it's like, y'all not doing more than I would do for myself. So therefore,
You have to do it
I'll start doing it. Right.
Absolutely.
That makes sense.
Yeah, but like I said, it was a good learning experience.
Right.
And I'm proud of the product. So, but yeah, everybody has to figure out where they are, right?
Absolutely.
Everybody doesn't, for some people, the drop to $2,000 is just something they can't do. And if they do it, it would impact their ability to feed their family. So they have to do a different route.
No, absolutely.
And one of my friends, I'm not sure how, but and it could be because I don't know. He just found a academic publishing place, and they did the whole thing on his first book. And I was like, how did that happen? Who did you know?
Right.
Because I don't think a lot of people that I
but
know.
Did he get like a traditional advance and things like that, or?
Well, I don't know. I didn't ask because I don't get into people's money.
No. When I say just about traditional, they're supposed to give you an advance before, like, for the material rather than the way you done it or the way I do it of doing it.
Okay. And
that's why I'm asking.
I'd imagine that they did. His book is here as well. It's 150 years of Obamacare is what he wrote about. But yeah, but he immediately was with a publishing house, and I was like, what relationship? A lot of things I think in life are relationships. So I'm trying to figure out who he had a relationship with that allowed for that to happen.
Right. And I think you're in a great place because you have the marketing of just networking and all the different fraternities and the things you've built over the years. I think definitely is going to help you definitely not only sell the book, but get your message out there to those that want to hear it, because they need to hear it. And that's the beautiful thing.
And I want people that really, guys, that redefine man up. When we don't feel well, go to the doctor. Take your month of your birthday and do your annual physical. That way, it's always easy to remember when to do it. Do it the same month you were born. You're not going to forget your birthday.
That's true. Absolutely. So true.
Just go ahead and do that, because and then sometimes, instead of manning up saying, hey, I'm just going to get some rest, like, hey, something's not right. You know what you're supposed to feel like.
Right.
Go see the doctor. Go for a walk every once in a while. Get a little exercise.
Get some fresh air. Absolutely.
Exactly. And we all, and many of us need to just slow down. We can't, things aren't going to fall by the wayside if we take a little time for ourselves.
Yeah.
Things will.
My last question for you is there any suggestions you have for those that want to write a book?
I would tell them just do it. So don't be scared. Just get out there, grab your computer, whatever kind, and just get the writing and just write. Don't worry about editing all the way through. Just write.
No, yeah.
Just
I
sit
tell
down,
people,
write and write until you're done, and you'll know when you're done. No one's going to tell you. It's not a certain number
right.
of pages. Just write.
I tell people if they can know your beginning and know your end and find your way through the maze of the middle.
Yeah.
If for fiction at least, and just write 2 hours a day, and you'll be surprised at the end of 30 days. You'll be surprised how much you've already written, and it will make you want to keep going and figure out the rest of your story. So for sure, just said that you got to sit in the chair and just write. That's where it starts.
But don't make it hard on yourself. Just enjoy the process and write. Don't think about it. Just, get the words on the page, words on the screen, and everything else will work itself out.
Totally agree. So usually I do a quote of the day and then lyrics of the day. The quote of the day will be from Stephen King. If you don't have time to read, you don't have time or the tools to write. Simple as that. So I think that's something that writers, if you consider yourself a writer, you got to read. There's no if or ands about it. You just have to. It's just a staple you should have as a writer. Absolutely. I don't know if you agree with that, but.
Oh yeah, I try to read something. Like I said, I got all my books in my little library, and I try to read something. You know, sometimes it's fiction, sometimes it's nonfiction. Sometimes I might not get through the whole book, but I'll read.
Right. Absolutely. And lyrics of the day comes from Bon Jovi, and I thought of this because of your book. It's called "It's My Life." It's my life, and it's now or never, because I ain't gonna live forever. I just want to live while I'm alive. It's my life. So I thought those lyrics were very potent. It kind of tells about your survivor's remorse story. And I assume the title Survivor's Remorse is because of you receiving the heart transplant of a younger individual.
Yeah. And it's this person had to die so I could live. And then thinking about and learning how to deal with favor. Why me as opposed to anybody else? Why did I live as opposed to anybody else? And learning how to manage and understand the concept of favor. And what did I? That's the word. It's another phrase I was thinking of, but I can't remember it. But learning how to understand God's favor. So when we talked earlier about my relationship with God prior and post transplant, I never really thought about favor and how to deal with her, how to manage God, how to understand God's favor. So things like that. There's things that I gained a greater understanding of. So part of that remorse is learning how to navigate emotionally and work through logically these things, these blessings that I've been given.
Do you believe it's more favor over grace, just that he was gracious enough to allow you to have someone else's heart? Maybe because of their journey. Yeah.
Well, maybe their journey was over, and they did whatever God had for them to do on this planet.
Right.
Right. And that doesn't always have to be when you're 80 or 90 for that.
Absolutely.
End, right.
Right.
Dr. King had 33 years? No, 30 years, somewhere in the 30s, right? I don't remember the number. So his mission was over, right? And look at the legacy he left in such a short time. And there's other examples, Medgar Evers, you mentioned earlier, and others who they did what they were intended to do on this earth in a short time. So, I had to look at, maybe mine's just beginning. Maybe this book and this story is just the beginning for me. And I wasn't listening. And when you don't listen, God has a way of slowing you down and saying,
waking you up. Yeah. Absolutely. So I want to.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No worries. I'll talk forever. I told you, long-winded runs in the family.
No, I hear you. So I want to thank Dr. Arthur Vaughn for sharing his story and his book, Survivor's Remorse. We'll definitely have the link available on the YouTube and all major platform audio links such as Spotify. Thank you guys again. This is Americana Quill, Writer to Writer.
Thanks.